Welcome to the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel. I'm Trisha Mifsud, and today alongside me we have Ellie and Hamish, and we're going to take you through the 2023 Collingwood preview. It was quite an exciting year for Collingwood, so this one's going to be a fun one, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, we'll get stuck straight into it then. We'll look at season 22. There were so many surprises, and I think a lot of people could say it would be quite unexpected, the turnaround from 17th to practically finishing third, that prelim, but we don't need to go there. Hamish, what was your take out of it, and what were the big things to come out of 2022?
Yeah, I think just kind of reflecting what you said, just a really big surprise. Of course, the club finished second last year before, and in many ways it looked like they could be going down the path of a rebuild or at the very least a reset. But under new coach Craig McRae, they shocked everyone to, as you said, go top four and finish just a kick away from the grand final. I don't think anyone would have expected that. It's impossible to ignore Craig McRae, the coach of the year, just the kind of game plan he brought in. He brought a lot of life back into the club, both on and off the field, which obviously resulted in a lot of wins. It's hard to go past Nick Dacos. He obviously probably had as much pressure as any kid coming into the AFL that I can remember in recent memory, but somehow he surpassed all expectations. Took out the rising star off halfback and just looked so calm and composed. Of course, a key feature of Collingwood during the year was a lot of close finishes. I think, speaking as a supporter, I now have a heart of a man 4 times my age because they certainly knew how to make you nervous, but it also meant they were must-see TV each week. Collingwood always, one of the big clubs, but I think everybody wanted to tune in because they knew they were going to get their money's worth, and their ability to just stage miraculous comebacks was incredible to see. So all in all, just a great season for Collingwood to really put themselves back in the premiership race when it looked like they were heading in the exact opposite direction just 12 months ago.
It was a good point you made. I think if you weren't a Collingwood supporter, you never found an excuse to watch our games. But I feel like the more conversations you had with just general football supporters throughout the year, people were wanting to watch them because they were finally exciting.
The main difference for me was, I think, watching Collingwood in 2021, it was kind of that pulling teeth thing where the game style was very sort of dry and very hard to watch. But you go to 2020, last year, 2022, and they're actually, the brand of football they play is extremely exciting, besides the fact that sometimes they can't kick straight, but I think that's just the Collingwood thing. So
Oh, I don't think we'll ever have a side that actually can kick straight, but we're getting there. It was quite exciting to see a few of the younger boys step up. Obviously, we mentioned Nick Dacos. You couldn't look past his season. But moving along, we'll have a look at the list changes through the off season. Considering our quite shocking trade period reputation in the past, I think those building years, or whatever people wanted to describe them as, it almost paid off this season. We've got a few exciting players joining our team for 2023.
Absolutely. Just running through I think coming into the trade period, there was, I think, the names are like Dan McStay and Bobby Hill coming to the club, but then towards the end of the trade period, it was like Pies actually might get Tom Mitchell, and I think Tom Mitchell was one of those names that has been floated around for like past 3 trade periods that he would actually leave Hawthorn, and so you're like, oh yeah, he's not going to go. But yeah, to see like him actually go to the Pies, and then I think my TikTok For You page at the moment is constantly him doing those vlogs around the club. But yeah, I think they're generally exciting additions, and Billy Frampton as well. He's sort of that player that probably is that typical Collingwood pickup, I guess, where he probably didn't do as good at the Crows, but sort of like the Jordan Roughheads and Lyndon Duns of recent years, where they actually, and Pat Lipinski, can find their own at Collingwood. Although Pat Lipinski was always going to be a great player, he just couldn't get the minutes at the Dogs.
Oh, it was fantastic to see the way he broke into the side. But just quickly, I wanted to touch on Tommy Mitchell. Now that we finally do have him, this one can go out to either of you. How do you think he fits into that midfield? Like, we've got such a star-studded group, and does he slide straight in? Does he, how do we see it happening?
Yeah, I think he fills a pretty important role immediately. For all the good Collingwood did last season, the area they were weakest in was with contested ball clearances. Kind of reminded me a lot of Richmond during their early, I guess, premiership years, where they were a team who, just really drove a lot of their ball movement off halfback and rebounding. But I do think you need players in there who can get in there, get a clearance, get the ball and get it out to some of your players on the outside. And we obviously know how important Taylor Adams was in that role, and he had quite an injury interrupted season. So I think Tom Mitchell coming in beyond, just his pedigree as a former Brownlow medalist helps balance that out a bit. It probably takes some pressure off Taylor Adams, so he's not just seen as, a distributor or contested player. And I think it's also good for Mitchell himself going to a team, obviously Hawthorn are going in a different direction, rebuilding, to now being in a contending team, which actually has a genuine role suiting his skill set.
We'll move along now to the other group of players joining the club, and that was via the draft. For a lack of a better way to say it, I don't think we were necessarily too fussed on securing, the top 10, the top 20 draft picks, in terms of we were really bringing in that experience. And, we've highlighted that through our trades in. But Hamish, take us through who we have picked up via draft and what these young kids could bring to the side.
Yeah, it was quite an interesting draft night. There was a bit of conjecture about whether Collingwood would try and move up, which I think, to be fair, half the clubs in the AFL always try and move up on draft night to get a player. But they ended up getting a bit of a slider from Ed Allen from Claremont. In WA, a lot of people had him going in the early teens, and he ended up sliding to Collingwood's pick 19. He did have an injury-interrupted season, but he's just really a really prototypical player for what modern clubs and recruiters are looking for. He's a really big boy. He's got the frame to be a big contested midfielder, even though I know Steele Sidebottom said recently he thought he could also carve out a role on the wing. He's also the son of former Hawthorn best and fairest winner and premiership player Ben Allen. So, he comes from a really strong footy background as well. Then we picked 28. Collingwood took Jacob Ryan from Glenelg, who was the player they were really linked to all throughout the draft, and who a lot of people thought might have gone at pick 19 if Allen hadn't slided. He's a really exciting halfback. He's not only noticeable for his running skills and good intercepting skills, but he's got a really nice dirty mullet, which I'm sure will make him a cult hero pretty quickly down at Pyland. But potentially someone who could take the pressure off someone like Jeremy Howe as he kind of moves into the latter stages of his career. And then we picked 48 up. One of the stories of the draft in Joe Richards, a 22-year-old out of the Ovens Murray Football League, played for the Wangaratta Magpies, who, of course, are coached by former premiership player Ben Reid, who said that he was in the ear of Graham Wright and Derek Kine down at Collingwood to try and get him to the club. He played as a speedy small mid during this year, but Derek Kine also floated the possibility that he might play a bit of halfback with a potential move into the midfield for Nick Dacos. And then in the rookie draft, they just used their pick to re-rookie Cooper Murley, who they took last year in the draft, a small mid-forward from South Australia. So just kind of pretty modern move of they only delisted him so they could have 3 picks in the national draft. So not quite there, but a pretty exciting national draft for the Pies.
Definitely. Now, as journalists, we all love a bit of headlines and a bit of news making, and I think Collingwood arguably would have topped the news headlines quite recently with Scotty Pendlebury stepping down as captain and Darcy Moore subsequently being nominated as our 48th skipper. Ali, do you want to run us through that and some of the other major off-season news to come out of the off-season?
So, as always, down at, what is it called now? The AIA Centre.
It changes every year, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, as you mentioned before, late last year or early this year, Scott Pendlebury stepped down as captain after a lot of years. I don't know the number.
Oh, that's gross.
And then Darcy Moore was later announced as the new club skipper, which was only just recently. I don't even know what day it is, so I can't tell you when. But anyway, Craig Kelly, the father, of listed player Will Kelly, has been announced as the new CEO of Collingwood. Pre-Christmas, a few key players did extend their time at the club. So Jack Crisp re-signed until the end of 2026, and Brody Myercheck extended until the end of 2025. And then just on Monday, I believe it was, Oscar Steen from West Adelaide in South Australia signed with the club as the last spot on their list as a supplemental selection pick, and he trained with the club over the preseason. So yeah, he's 19 years of age and a ruckman, so pretty handy considering they lost a pretty big one over the off season.
Did we? I'm surprised we didn't actually talk about him too much a little bit earlier. Maybe we'll backtrack. So obviously that spot is left to fill. Darcy Cameron showed he can do a little bit of work there. Obviously Mason Cox will probably get a bit more time in that. Does Oscar get a chance straight away, or do we think that it will be left with the likes of Cameron and Cox until he finds a little bit more of his feet?
I think, well, they did okay with Grundy, like not in the side. Like, of course, there could be room for improvement, but that run, I think from what was it, a 10-game winning streak, I don't think he wasn't in the side. I don't think he played after Anzac Day. So, but then he's an all-Australian ruckman at the same time. They don't grow on trees, but I think for the medium term, Cameron and Cox will do just fine. But yeah, you've got the likes of Aidan Begg and Oscar Steen coming through the ranks, and ruckman do tend to take a little bit more time to develop. So yeah, I think Darcy and Mason can hold it over for the next couple of years unless there's another free agent popping up between now and then.
All right. I want to run through a semi-quick fire questionnaire. We'll alternate it back and forwards. We'll start off with you, Hamish. How do you judge your club's preseason?
Yeah, well, I think as Ellie touched on, it's been quite busy off the field with signings and captaincy changes, but on the actual track, it's been pretty positive overall, even though there have been some injuries. As you mentioned, Tom Mitchell's been blowing up TikTok, and I know a lot of Pies fans are happy to see that over the Christmas break he's kind of been training with a lot of the boys, which I guess shows great leadership for someone who's just entered the club. There have been a few injury concerns. Of course, Darcy Moore had that bone infection. He is back at training and pushing for round one, though I guess we'll know in the fullness of time closer to the start of the season. Darcy Cameron did suffer some hamstring tightness, but that's only expected to sideline him for a couple of weeks. And Finn McRae, of course, a young midfielder going into his third year at the club, has a stress-related back issue, so he's been limited at training. The one big injury has been to Nathan Kruger, who, of course, arrived from Geelong last year, showed some really promising signs, but that same shoulder, which kept him on the sidelines, it's, of course, another issue again where he's had surgery and he's not expected to be back until the first 6 rounds of the season.
You don't like it when any player's injured, but seeing how well Krug slot into the side and the impact he had straight away, you could see it was missing once he had injured his shoulder. It was shattering.
Yeah, definitely.
Ali, do you play fantasy or Supercoach?
I try. I can't say I do it well, but I do try.
If you had to pick one Collingwood player, who has to be in our teams?
So I was doing some research. There's actually quite a few, but I'm a bit of a cheapskate, so I like to go for the cheaper players. So Darcy Cameron, obviously the touted Grundy Gawn matchup won't work in Supercoach anymore as they are in the same team. So you of course need to find yourself another ruckman and splurge in the midfield where most of the gun midfielders, I can't speak today, where most of the gun midfielders are. And yeah, go for Darcy Cameron. Again, did quite well in 2022. And he's cheap for, I think in Supercoach it's 465,000. So for a ruckman, that's not a lot. So yeah, you can
No.
splurge elsewhere.
And he's probably going to be considered our number one go-to ruck anyway for at least the first half of that year. So bargains, we love bargains. Hamish, what's one change that the Pies need to implement this year?
Yeah, this was quite a tough one because they obviously made quite a few moves last year under a new coach, but I think it might be getting more midfield minutes for Nick Dacos. We know how good he was off halfback last season. Thought he was very unlucky not to be in the AA squad after the season he had, but it's something that's already on the agenda to try and get him in the middle a bit more. I think not only would it be good for just his natural progression as a player going into his sophomore year, giving him a new challenge, but I think it would also add a new dynamic to the team. One of my biggest worries has been when the end inevitably comes. I don't want it to happen, but when Scott Pendlebury does retire, trying to find a player who can match his skill set. I think it spoke a lot that Pendlebury initially played off halfback last season, but got moved back into the midfield, and that also coincided with the Pies' improved form. And I think Nick Dacos possesses the skills to kind of make that inevitable transition a bit easier, because you just saw last year's maturity, in the contests, in pressure situations where there were quite a few of them at the end of games. He just kept a cool head. So I think getting him in there would just be really exciting to see.
Think that transition is coming a little bit more sooner than we'd hope. It might only be 1 or 2 seasons now after stepping down, but we'll enjoy it while we can. Ali, what are you excited the most about seeing with the Pies this year?
I'm most excited to see how Dan McStay fits into the Pies forward line. The Pies have been screaming out for a solid key forward for I don't know how many years now, since Travis Cloak left almost.
Maybe during that too. No, I love the
guy. But no, yeah. But yeah, so I remember watching, I think it was the 2019 prelim, the prelim that's just gone. I think there wasn't that main play to sort of step up and take, I think, the brunt of it. I think a lot of it was left on Brody Myercheck. And when he's getting the number one defender, he's only probably not, I don't think you can sort of center a forward line consistently around Myercheck.
Yeah.
But they've finally got the key forward. It's just a matter of seeing how it works and if it does work. But yeah, I'm looking, if there's anyone that can do it, it's Craig McRae. So yeah, fingers crossed for Pies fans there.
All right, Hamish, finish this sentence off for me. It's a big year for?
I'm going to go with Will Kelly. We mentioned him earlier, like, of course, a father-son selection, and touching on the point of Collingwood having a lack of key position players. He's one of the only few young key position players they do have on the list. It was a 2018 father-son pick, went in the top 30, was quite highly touted, but he's just had a really rough run at it in his first 4 seasons in the system. He's only played the 3 games and dealt with a lot of injuries. Last year was actually the first year where he didn't have as many injury issues, but he didn't play a senior game and played 17 in the VFL. So it will be tough for him because obviously Collingwood have added Billy Frampton and Dan McStay, so their key position stocks have gotten even more deep. But I think for him, it's just not even necessarily trying to become a best 22 player, but just seeing if he can get a few senior games under his belt to just show what he can do at the level. He's been trialled forward and back. He signed a 1-year deal last year, so definitely there's a bit of pressure that this might be his last chance. But, it would be fantastic if he's able to show some form at the AFL level this year.
And then for you, Ali, who's ready for a breakout year?
So I feel like there's always, every season, there's sort of those plays that sort of teeter on the edge of like being in the side and being out of it. And there's always, I think when you look at team list as a whole on the Thursday night, it's the same plays sort of getting omitted every week. But I think Trent Bianco is in for. I feel like I probably didn't watch or look at Collingwood too closely, but I feel like he was one of those players. Played I think 10 games last season. Um, but towards the back end of the year, he sort of found his spot in that side, and I think that decision, I think it was on the wing in that game against Essendon. It sort of showed how much he's grown as a player across his 22 games of football, and he's only 22, so big upside ahead. But yeah, I think he's in for a breakout year.
Yeah, I think he was really flirting with that sort of permanent best 22 position. He was flirting with that, being in that best 22, and he was unlucky in the sense that he couldn't keep that spot, but lucky in the sense that there were those injury setbacks with Collingwood, like we've seen year after year, and it's giving those younger kids that opportunity to step up. We'll get to the pointy end of things now. One game, Hamish, that is a must watch on our calendar.
Well, it's probably low-hanging fruit to choose the game against the reigning premiers, but I do think it's round one, big Friday night lights against Geelong. But it's not just because they're still going to be the benchmark next year, but obviously they had two epic encounters last year. Early in the season, Collingwood had that big lead, which Geelong were able to just whittle down in the final quarter. And then that classic qualifying final where, it was neck and neck all day, the Cats just getting in front. And it was a performance which looked even better in hindsight for Collingwood, considering what the Cats did to the Lions and then the Swans in the grand final. So I think the Pies not only carrying the confidence that they were the one team to give Geelong a challenge during September, but just two close encounters where they came out on the wrong side. I'm sure they'll be out to prove themselves in round one.
And potentially as well, there may be a old teammate lining up against Geelong. Obviously, I don't know what I'm not up to date on the injury status of one Tom Hawkins, but you'd think if he doesn't make round one, Oliver Henry might be in the mix.
Just imagine. I don't know if this is potentially could fit your question, Elliot, but I have for you a headline you'll see in 2023, and it wouldn't surprise me if Ollie's name is in the mix there.
I actually didn't think of that. No,
what did you go with?
Pardon?
What did you go with?
I went with Tom Mitchell will I haven't really I have it in my head, but I haven't written it out. Tom Mitchell will recapture some of his best form at Collingwood.
Oh, I like that. And I mean, I think there's quite a few of us that hope he does. The change of environment and, new teammates, it does a lot of people good. So it's exciting.
Yeah, as Hamish mentioned before, obviously the TikTok vlogs have probably been popping up over the last few years, and I don't know what he was like at Hawthorn, but I think that buy-in is there, and that it's just a wonder what a good buy-in in a good environment can do for players and as a whole teams, which we saw with Collingwood last year. But yeah, I think he's at the pointy end of his career now. I don't want to call anyone old or anything like that. But yeah, he's not in his younger days, but I think he can probably find his best form. Probably not Brownlow medal form, but I think he can find sort of that happy medium again in 2023.
I'll pose this last one to the both of you because we all love a good prediction. What's the minimum expectation for Collingwood this year, and where do you think they will finish on the ladder?
I think for me, they still have to make the top 8. I think dropping out of the top 4 is understandable. They obviously took till the final game of the season to solidify their spot with the ladder against Carlton. But I think considering they'll get a tougher draw, obviously having finished in the top 4, just a lot of the teams around them have also gotten better. I think Collingwood overall have improved their list, especially considering Grundy didn't play for the majority, so he's the biggest out, but he didn't play for much of last season. But I think the biggest question with that finishing spot will be if they can kind of capture the same momentum and just kind of intangible they had about them, because it was a bit of a magic ride when they went on that winning streak. But I still think they have the core talent to make top 8, and I'm going to go with top 6. I think top six overall. I think it's important to still get that home final. We saw how loud the MCG was for them throughout the year. So I think 6 is a good benchmark for them to aim for.
Would you say the same, Ali?
I think the minimum expectation is definitely top 8. It's a tougher draw this year. Teams have sort of had the chance to sort of figure out what they did and how they did it. So there's that. But it was a magical, like the close games in themselves, but the fact that they could continuously run out those close matches as well. I think the fitness team has probably been at its best than it has been over the some years, because players are gassed at like the final 2 minutes of the last quarter, and the way that they could keep just doing it again and again. But in saying that, I'm a pessimist at heart, so I think I have them pegged between 7th and 9th. So that bottom end of the top 8, I don't think they will be as good in the regular season. We've seen what teams can do in the finals, but I think many teams could possibly be found out this year. And I think, bottom end of top 8, maybe just slipping out.
Well, I guess on that note, it'll wrap up the inner sanct. I was too sad. I was like, no, don't talk about being out at the top. No, but no. In a serious note, I think that wraps up the Inner Sanctum's Collingwood preview for the 2023 season. On behalf of myself, Hamish, and Ali, we'd like to thank you for watching this one, and please go and check out all our other previews on our YouTube channel. Other than that,